The word on my heart for today is transitions. Transitions, a natural and yet necessary part of life, something that we're going to have to walk through over and over and over again as we journey through life. And oftentimes, transitions come with great challenges, difficulties. Sometimes they can be downright painful and many times even scary. But if we will learn how to navigate transition well, transition actually carries within it the potential to catapult us into our promised land, to position us in the assignments, in the callings that God has specifically and uniquely for us as His sons and daughters, as well as for us corporately as the body of Christ. So what we want to do over the next couple of weeks is learn how to navigate transition well. Not perfectly, there's grace there, of course, but we want to learn how to navigate them well so that we don't miss opportunities, so that we don't miss out on what God is doing, so that we can advance in the kingdom of God. So stay with me, because on the other side of the break, we're going to begin looking at a major transition that Joshua walked through, and we're going to glean everything we can from that transition in order to equip ourselves to handle the transitions of life well. So stay with me. We'll be right back on the other side of the break. So in this current series, we're going to be looking at how to navigate transition well. And we're going to do that by looking at Joshua chapter 1, and we're going to read through the first few verses that are there. But before we do that, I want to read to you the definition for transition so that we can identify with this just a little bit more. This will help us to acclimate to it. The definition for transition is movement, passage, or change from one position, state, stage, subject, concept to another. The operative word in that definition is the word change, because transition implies change. Now let me read to you some synonyms for the word transition as well. Development, growth, passage, progress, and progression. And these are some antonyms for the word transition: decline, decrease, idleness, stagnation, sameness, and stoppage. Those are antonyms for the word transition. So transition implies change without question. A transition's coming, that means a change is coming. But without transition, listen to this, without transition, there's going to be decrease. Without transition, there's going to be stagnation. Without transition, there's going to be sameness or stoppage. So transition, by its very implication, implies a change, but that change leads to development. That change can lead to growth. That change can lead to progress. Without transitions, we're not going to have progress. We're going to have sameness. Without transitions, we're not going to have growth. We're going to have stagnation. So what we want to do is we want to approach our transitions with the understanding that contained in that transition is an opportunity for growth. Contained within that transition is an opportunity for progress. And instead of perceiving the transition as a negative thing, as hard as it may be, as painful as it may be, as scary as it may be, if we can get God's vision for that transition, then we can partner with Him to realize some incredible things. Actually, that transition has the ability to catapult us into our promised land, as we're going to see from the text that we're looking at today. Now, before we go there, let's just think through some different transitions that we all have to go through at one time or another, or may go through, or may be presently going through right now. So the first one I thought about is the transition of a job transition, and hopefully you can see that on the board. But the transition of a job, that could be a negative or a positive. It could be that you've gotten fired from one job and you are now in the transition of looking for another job. It could be that one job has laid you off and now you're in the process, the transition of looking for another job. Or it could be that a better job opportunity has come along, and that in itself is a transition. And whatever it is, you want to learn how to navigate that well so that you can make the most of the opportunity. And it's important to realize not every opportunity that comes our way, not every opportunity that presents itself as a transition is necessarily of the Lord. So you want to use discernment in navigating those possible transitions, and then of course the ones that come into our life that we didn't invite, that we didn't ask for. We need to see that there is an opportunity, that God has made sure that there is grace in that transition that will provide an opportunity for growth, provide an opportunity for advancement. The other one, which is closely related, might be a career, which is very similar to a job, but a career is more of a lifelong pursuit, right? So if you have a career that comes to an end and you're entering a new season of life and you're presented with a new career opportunity, that can be very challenging, very scary. But remember, within that transition, there is opportunity for growth, as we shall see. It could be that you are in the transition of a marriage. I always forget if there's two R's. A marriage. Transition of a marriage. It could be that you're newly married. And if you're newly married, that is a transition in and of itself. But it comes with this tremendous opportunity for growth. Or it could be that you are in a transition where you have gone through a divorce. Maybe it was an unwanted divorce and you've been catapulted into this transition that you didn't ask for, but you need to know that still within that transition there is grace for the opportunity for growth, grace for the opportunity for progression, grace for the opportunity for development, grace for the opportunity of advancement. Yes, even when you find yourself in an unwanted end to a marriage, there is provision in the transition for growth. The next one, it might be the transition of children. This is a big one. It could be that you have a child that's come into your life. Maybe it's your first child, or maybe you're transitioning from one child to two. I always told people going from 1 to 2 was really hard. Going from 2 to 3, not so hard. But that is a life transition that can be difficult to navigate. And sometimes when you're in the middle of it, it just seems all-consuming and overwhelming. You need to know there's a grace in that transition that will position you in your promised land, that will position you for advancement, position you for growth. It could be a season where your children have all grown up and you are an empty nester and you are in a transition of that whole change that's going on. And you need to know that if that is the transition you're in, there is grace in the transition for your growth. There is grace available to you in that transition, opportunity. Opportunity for advancement, opportunity for you to be propelled into the future destiny, calling, and assignments that God has for you. Your life doesn't end when your children grow up and move out and begin to carry on their own life. You're just entering into a new season, and that new season is full of potential. It's a transition. It can be a painful one, but it is not without the necessary grace to get you to the next place that God has on your calendar of destiny. Okay, the next one might be a move, right? Sometimes moves are exciting. Sometimes we find ourselves in a forced move. Sometimes we're moving from one city to another. Sometimes we're moving from one neighborhood to another. Sometimes we're moving because we have to maybe downsize for a period of time. But you need to know that even in the move, regardless of what it is, maybe you've moved from one city to another and you're in that process of transition, reestablishing yourself in a new community, a new church, whatever it might be, making new friendships. Just know there is grace in that transition that is available to you for the opportunity for growth, for the opportunity for development, for the opportunity for advancement, for the opportunity for progress. It's available right there in the transition of your move, and you want to learn how to navigate it well. The other one I thought about is the transition of loss. Probably one of the hardest transitions would be the loss of a child. That is an extremely painful transition. Could be the loss of a spouse. I just have thought many times about men or women who have been married for 30, 40, 50 years to somebody, and then they lose that spouse in death, right? Because that's part of life. Death is going to happen. It's a transition. But you need to know, as hard as it feels right now, as painful and as barren, maybe even as the future may feel at the moment, there is a grace available to you in this transition for growth. There is a grace that is available to you in this transition for something beautiful and good in your future. There is a grace available to you that will position you in a new season with promises of God, with the destiny and the assignments and the calling that God has for you. Because if you're still here, and you are, if you're listening to me, God still has more in store for you. And this loss is a transition. It's a transition that is filled with the grace of God and gives you opportunities to grow and advance even in the things of God for the next season that He's taking you into. The next one might be just a transition of seasons. Sometimes one season of life comes to an end and we are beginning a new season of life. It could be a transition of ministry. That can also be a challenging one. You're coming maybe out of one particular ministry into a new ministry, or maybe it's a church transition. You've been in one fellowship for a number of years and God is leading you into a new fellowship. Just know there is grace available to you in the transition for your progress, for your development, for your growth, to advance you in the will of God for your life, to advance you into your promised land. So there's really two types of transitions. We could categorize them in two different ways. There's the transitions that we didn't ask for, we didn't want, that just kind of got thrown upon us, whether it's, a marriage coming to an end, a loss, a job ending that you weren't counting on or planning on. Those can all be very, very challenging, painful transitions. Those are the kinds that come into your life that you didn't ask for. And then there's transitions that come to us that really are presented as an option, right? You have these 2 or 3 options put before you, and that transition can be scary to think about because you're maybe thinking about leaving something behind in order to enter this other option that's in front of you, and you have to learn how to discern whether that is from God or is it from man. And so transitions are a part of life, a necessary part of life, a natural part of life, something that we're going to have to go through again and again and again. And we want to make sure that we are getting everything we can out of those transitions. We want to learn to navigate them well. So let's go ahead now and let's go to Joshua chapter 1. And I'm going to read to you just the first few verses from this particular chapter. And then we're going to begin talking about the transition that Joshua found himself in the middle of at this season of life. So beginning in verse 1, it says, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spoke to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, you and all this people, to the land which I am giving to them, the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given you. As I said to Moses, from the wilderness and this Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, and to the great sea toward the going down of the sun, shall be your territory. No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and of good courage, for to this people you shall divide as an inheritance the land which I swore to their fathers to give them. Okay, so this portion of scripture represents a major transition, not only in the life of Joshua personally, but also in the life of Israel as a nation, right? They were getting ready to go from the east side of the Jordan to the west side of the Jordan. And so what I want to do is I want to make a list. We're going to go through a list of several transitions that not only Joshua was having to face, but the nation of Israel was having to face. And as we work through these transitions, we're going to glean some important things about how to navigate the transitions in our own personal lives as well. So let me first erase this board and then we'll begin. Okay, so now that we've got that cleaned up, the very first transition that we see listed for us here in Joshua chapter 1, it says, after the death of Moses. Here what we have is a transition of leadership. A transition of leadership. There was a changing of the guards. There was going to be a change from Moses to Joshua. Now remember, Moses had been leading the nation of Israel for 40 solid years. And now he's gone, he's dead. And so now the Lord is speaking to Joshua because Joshua was to step up and he was the one who was going to take the Israelites from the east side of the Jordan to the west side of the Jordan. And so we have a changing of the guards. Now here's something that's really important to remember. Sometimes a changing of the guards can take us off guard, right? Like there can be a change, a major change in the guard of where you're working, in your job environment, or it could be in the community where you're living, or it could be at your church, or within a ministry that you're affiliated with, or just, you know, something where there's that kind of structure and there's a leadership that gets shifted around. And sometimes it can take us by surprise. It can take us off guard. But what we have to remember is it never takes God off guard. It never takes God by surprise. And what we see is that long before Moses died, Joshua was being prepared to take his place. And I almost don't want to use that terminology because I think one of the mistakes that people make when there is a major change in leadership like this is they can look to the new leader to somehow fill the shoes of the old leader. And this new leader, which you have to remember, always brings with them a whole new set of skills and talents and abilities that are going to be distinct from the previous leader. But this new leader who's been positioned there by God is the one who has been called to lead them into the new season, to lead them into the new territory. And it's this person's skills and abilities and talents that God is going to use for that new season. Now, it doesn't mean that they just trash all the old things that the leader previous to them did. You always want to honor the former leadership. You want to build on what they've done. But I think if you're in a position where you're looking to new leadership, you have to remember to carry this kind of an idea in that transition, this kind of a heart into that transition. And this is what I wanted to read to you. This is in Joshua 1:16 through 18. Look at how the people responded to Joshua. It says, "So they answered Joshua, saying, 'All that you command us we will do. Wherever you send us, we will go. Just as we heeded Moses in all things, so we will heed you. Only the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. Whoever rebels against your command and does not heed your words in all that you command him shall be put to death. Only be strong and of good courage.'" They navigated this transition really well for this one reason. They made a decision to rally behind Joshua. Now, it helped tremendously that prior to all of this, they had been somewhat prepared for it. And so actually at one point, Moses lays hands on Joshua to transfer that mantle, to show that he had his approval and that God had his hand in that handing off the mantle to this new era, that Joshua represented. But sometimes, let's be honest, sometimes it doesn't come that way. Sometimes it feels like we go from one leadership to another and it seems to have taken us by surprise. It's something we didn't necessarily plan or feel like we prepared for, but God is prepared for it. And that's the part that we have to remember. And if we will seek his heart for who is to step into that leadership position, if we're involved in that, then we can have some strong assurance that God has equipped and prepared this person to carry you into the new season. And a transition in leadership always represents a transition in seasons. It always means that there is something old that is passing away so that God can usher you into something new. And so one of the things that people can do to sabotage the transition of leadership so that it's not as successful and effective as it could be is when they try to put the old yoke on the new leader. Do you know what I'm saying? They try to pour the new wine into the old wineskins by making comparisons and trying to force this person into an old pattern. And so one of the best things you can do when you're ushering in new leadership in any environment is to really begin to try to celebrate and, like they did, rally behind that person, honor those gifts. You do it always looking back with respect and honor to the previous leadership, but not expecting this person to somehow duplicate what the previous one did. And when you do that, everyone's going to win because God knows what he's doing when he brings in new leadership. He absolutely knows. It may take a while to figure out who it is that God has actually chosen to fulfill this role, but he'll show you if you ask him. You just be patient. Don't try to race into it. He'll show you who is supposed to step into that. Now let me just flip this a little bit because it may not be, because I thought about it, may not be a leadership issue that you're talking about as far as transition, but it might just be a new assignment that you're stepping into. So you can identify in this way with Joshua. Maybe you're coming into a place that somebody else formerly occupied, and now you're carrying in, it doesn't necessarily have to look like a leadership position, it just may be a new position altogether. And you need to know, you need to have the assurance that if God has positioned you in this new position, it's for a new season. And you don't have to do it exactly like the old person. You honor the person who was there before you, but you're going to be looking for ways to build on what has already been done. And you need to have confidence in knowing that you are equipped for this new season, that the Lord already knew what it was going to take for the new person coming in to carry this project, this assignment, this ministry, this workplace, whatever it may look like. into this new season. And if you're the one who's been positioned there, just know God has equipped you for the task. And he's going to be with you, just like he said he was with Moses. He says, I will not leave you. I will not forsake you. Be strong and of good courage. He says, as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. And he says the very, very same words to us. As he was with whoever was previously before you, he's going to be with you. He is for you. He is not against you. So be strong and of good courage. We are just about out of time for today, but we have lots more still to cover in this topic, transitions. I have a whole list of transitions that I've pulled right here out of Joshua chapter 1. And we will continue on with that next week. But for today, I want to leave you with this. Joshua, it tells us that the Lord said to him, he said, be strong and of good courage. And then he says, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Which means that Joshua was dealing with some fears, and understandably so. He was responsible for leading this great multitude over the Jordan. And many times when we are looking at a transition, it can cause us to become very, very fearful. But if we will remember, like the Lord spoke these words to Joshua, I will be with you. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. If we can remember that one thing, allow that to really just sit on us. Allow that to be what leads us forward. Allow that to be what tempers us. Allow that to be the filter that we're putting things through. My God is with me. He will not leave me. He will not abandon me. He will not forsake me. He will not betray me. My God is with me, and he is for me, and he is walking this out with me. So sometimes the only thing we can do is just get the courage to take the next step. And that's really all you have to do today to navigate that transition that you're in. You don't have to understand the big picture. As you continue to walk forward through this with the Lord, he can begin to increase your vision for what lies ahead. And you want him to do that because that's part of what's going to fuel your heart with hope. But maybe today you just need to remember very simply that your God is with you. And yes, you will have to deal with fears. That is normal, but you don't want to be ruled by them. You want to be ruled by the truth that God is with you and he is for you. He's not going to leave you, nor will he forsake you. He's going to make sure that you go through this transition well if you will rely on him in the process.